Hey YouTube, back with another video, and today's topic is how to pull lists on while using Propstream. So in my first video I talked about Propstream as being one of the softwares that I've used completely all along. Like from the start, I have been rocking with Propstream. There's other softwares out there that people will talk to you about. PropWire is one of them that comes to mind, Jerry Norton software. Batch Leads is another one, but it's all just data. Data Tree is another one. That one's paid expense, better for land. But Propstream has been the most reliable one for me. So it's the one that I'm going to stick with and, kind of make a video about. It's affordable. It's about $97 a month. And what you get from that $97 a month is 10,000 exports. So what that means is every single month you can export your data in a CSV and put it wherever you need it. So if you need to put your data in another system, in a mailer, wherever you need that data to go, it goes with that 10,000 records. So Propstream is always my go-to. I'll probably still pay for the subscription even when I don't need it anymore. I'm a Propstream fan, so not sponsored by him. So the first thing that I do is, let's say you found your city, you know where you want to market. So we're going to go with Cape Coral just for the sake of this video, because I know that we're going to get a good amount of data here. And so you're using vacant land. So right now there's no filters in here at all. So one of the first things that you do is you go into the property characteristics, and in here you want to go down to the option of vacant land. So with that, you can see we were previously at, let's see how many records we were at, 140,000. So 140,000 unique properties. And now by checking off vacant land, we eliminated all of them. Well, not all of them, but now we're down to 44,000. And what that got rid of is commercial, houses, apartments, all that kind of stuff, So we got vacant land, and that is going to be the most important filter when you're pulling a vacant land list. In there for property characteristics, that's pretty much it. The only other thing that you might want to do is a minimum lot size. So if you know in your area, let's say 10,000 square feet is the minimum size of a piece of land that can be built on, and no matter what, you can't build on anything less, maybe the minimum you're going to do is, we'll just call it 9,000 just to be safe. And that will bring us from 44,000 to 37,000. Okay, so that's perfect. So now we're going to get a little bit more in depth to this, because 37,000 at 10 cents a record comes out to 3,700, and not everyone's trying to pay 3,700, to skip trace data. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go into the MLS status, and we're going to check off anything that's on market, because we don't want to be marketing to people that have their properties listed. So that got rid of a few. Next, ownership info. So this one's really key. So years of ownership. Our ideal seller is someone that has a piece of land, they've owned it for years, and they're not building on it. So you ask yourself, why would they still own it? There's several different reasons. They inherited it, they don't know what to do with it, they don't feel like doing anything with it. There's a million different things that you can come up with as to why they own it right now. But you don't want someone that just bought a piece of land last week. Like if you were to reach out to me and ask me if I want to sell my land, you're not going to get a good deal from me. Even if I do want to sell it, you're not going to get a good deal. But someone that's owned a piece of land, maybe let's say 15 years at a minimum. So that brought us down to 7,700 records. That is a lot smaller of a campaign compared to where we were at before. So that one's really key, and you can play with that number. I found the most success at 15 years and up. I've gotten the most deals from that. Just, people that have just owned it for years, and, they understand what's going on with the market. The market's increasing. They were getting offers of 10 grand last year. Now they're getting 15 this year, and maybe they want to sell for 20. You gotta figure that out and just talking with people. So another one that I like to do is for the owner type. I like to do either an individual or trust. Okay, so that brings us, looks like that number went up a little bit, 11,000, but that got rid of entities. I think it might have been glitching. But now we're at 11,000 records. And one other thing you can do is number of properties owned. So maybe someone as an individual buys a lot of properties, buys and sells. So you don't want to deal with like any personal names coming up that own a lot of land, just because, it's going to be a lot more difficult to get a good deal from them. And if they do own, like, let's say 50 properties or more, they probably don't want to sell, right? safe to assume. So I usually put a cap on that, but again, it's going to depend on how much data you really want to walk away with. You know, some people want a list of just a couple thousand. And if that's the case, you might want to go in and increase years of ownership, or maybe the property's owned. I find years of ownership is always like the first one I go to. So if I wanted more data right now, maybe the first thing I'm going to do is go into ownership and drop it down to 8 years. I found 8 is like usually the sweet spot. So that'll get us 12,000, but we'll go back to 15 just for this video, because like I said, you get 10,000 records a month. So we want to get as close to that 10,000 number as we can to, you know, form a marketing campaign in Cape Coral. So next one is mortgage info. So some people get mortgages on land, you know, and maybe you just want people that own it free and clear. So in here, what we can do is we can go to mortgage remaining balance, and we'll put the max as 0. And that brought us down closer to 10,000. So that means that they own it free and clear. You can play with this in another way too. You could delete, you know, that out of there. You go to valuation and equity percentage. You can do 100% equity. So, you know, kind of the same thing. Doesn't really matter. I found you can play around with a lot of these numbers in here, but again, you're getting really dialed in on something that, you know, Propstream is pretty accurate, but it's not always 100%. So just like anything else. So really you got to be careful with how many of these you mess with, you know, like estimated value of the land. You know, maybe you don't want anything that's under 5,000, but maybe there's a piece of land you see right there, 234 properties, but I can tell you the average sales price in Northeast and Northwest Cape is around 40,000. So how could the estimated value of only 234 properties be 5,000? It can't. So it's just the more you play around with it, the more you're going to find, but really, like, these are the key ones that I like to do. Now, you can get a little bit more, you know, dialed in. So we're going to reset this, actually, and we're going to start with Cape Coral again. And we're going to start with vacant land. But maybe you want to do people that have a little bit more motivation. Maybe you want a little bit more of a dialed in list. So over here, what we can do is we can go to categories like pre-foreclosure. Now, that's not going to be too common with land. One big one that I like to do is more of like liens. And in here, you can do has an active lien. And that only brings you down to 29. So let's not do that one. Let's see if we can find tax liens. 144. Okay. You see how you can get really dialed in though? So if you go to has an active lien and you get 29 records and you're manually doing this, you don't have money to skip trace and you just need to manually go through, it's not going to be much for you to export this list as a CSV, put it in an Excel doc, and then go into each property and figure out, you know, these people's mailing address, true people search them, get their information, and then just reach out to them. Because these people, if you're not paying, well, this wouldn't be taxes. Let's go to tax lien. So these 144 people, if they're not paying their taxes, chances are like they're done with the property. They're over it, you know. They inherited it from their parents and their parents seen a vision with it of it being a, you know, $1 million property, and that never happened. You know, like, I've had those kind of conversations on a very regular basis. So it's just playing with the list and being able to niche it down just a little bit more, because obviously this can be an overwhelming amount of records for someone, especially someone starting off, you know. And another one, and this one is a secret one, is failed listings. So they listed it on the market and then they took it off the market. So one out of two things probably happened. Either number one, it was overpriced, and the realtor, you know, blew smoke up their butt. I don't know if I can swear, but blew smoke up their butt and said, "Hey, this property's worth 60,000," and they go to list it, and they list it at 60,000, and no one's buying it because it's not worth 60,000. It's worth 40. But the realtor was just so focused on that 3% commission. 3% of 60,000 is what, 1,800? The realtor just really wanted that 1,800 instead of selling it and getting 1,200, you know, selling it for what it's actually worth. So these people feel hopeless, and a lot of times when it failed on market, it's either that it was overpriced or it was a bad listing. So sometimes you can go into a listing and you'll see like no pictures and the description just says vacant land. You know, land doesn't always sell itself. It does if it's priced right. You could put a listing below market value in Cape Coral and just write land on it, and you're going to get so many phone calls. But it doesn't happen like that all the time, and especially if it's priced, you know, like at retail or above retail, and you're putting it on the market and there's no pictures, and your realtor doesn't really know what they're doing with land, and they check off a few things in the MLS that shouldn't have been checked off. It's like those things all add up, and you're going to get less calls on the property. Like you can just go through these and you can tell, like some of these properties that were on market didn't even have pictures. Where there's this gray house right here, there's no pictures. But you look right here and you can tell these people got it right from the property appraiser site. Like this realtor, whoever he is, probably knew what they were doing. Same with this one right here. You can see the lot lines of the property, and you can see that it's in front of the water. So it really makes you wonder, like, why did this one not sell? It was probably overpriced. We can assume that. We can dig a little bit more into it. But these failed listings, this list can be good because with this list, you're going to be talking to people that want to sell. Maybe they want too much money. But if you're just starting off in this business and you're talking to people that want to sell, that's a little bit easier of a conversation to have than you trying to be persuasive and convince people to sell. You don't want to ever be having to convince people to sell. You want to work with people that want to sell. And that's pretty much the only type of people that we work with. So aside from that, that's pretty much it in Propstream. Don't try to do too much. You just want to do the basics. So ownership info, making sure you're talking to individuals and not corporations or anything like that. Years of ownership is huge, making sure they've owned it for a while. Valuation and equity, this is another big one. Like you want to make sure that they don't have any loans against the property. And you can really dial in a list in all different markets. And then after you do that, one other thing that I'll show you is, so let's say we do individuals and trust, years of ownership 15. We get all of our filters in. MLS, no. We're not going to do failed. We're going to go back to active. We're going to go back to nothing. MLS status, not on market. Valuation equity, we'll go back to 100%. And so now we're at 5,000 properties. And now let's say you want to go to another nearby market. Maybe we'll go to Lehigh, or it doesn't even have to be nearby. It can be whatever market that you're in. These filters are going to stay here through Propstream. So these filters that you created in here are going to change city to city. So the filters stay the same, and now you're going to have a new city of properties to look at. And you can do this in every city, and you can see maybe how much data am I getting in Lehigh versus how much am I getting in Cape Coral or Port Charlotte. How many leads are in Port Charlotte? Maybe I'll start here. Maybe you want a really high number, maybe you want a really small number. You're going to get a lot of data on Port Charlotte just because it's similar to a Lehigh market where it's really undeveloped and there's a lot of development happening. So even with this niche down list, you still almost get 10,000 leads. But maybe you want like a little bit more of a dialed in market. So we'll go to like Placida, and you go to Placida and look at that. You got 1,400 records. It's not the most growing market, but if you look, this is all HOA land. But in here, like you'll see some houses. Well, if you zoom out a little bit, you'll see some houses. There's some development, and this is another area where a lot of land's selling. Land's being traded here every day. Hundreds of pieces of land every single day getting listed, getting sold. Everything's happening. So it really just depends on what market you want to go into and what your backyard market looks like, or your target market, whatever it is for you. You just want to make sure that you're doing the right filters, because your results are going to only be as good as the data that you pull out of it. So if you're doing weird stuff in here and you're forgetting to do ownership info, let's say you forget to do how many years owned. Let's see the difference in this Placida list. You go from 1,400 to 4,200. And if you just look at the sale date, you just glance at it, you're getting data on 8 Finch Court, last sale date, April 2nd, 2024. So they're not going to be the most motivated person. They just bought it 2 weeks ago. Like they want the land, they have no interest in selling. And now you're spinning your wheels with people that recently acquired land, and it's like, and you're putting a lot of effort in when you don't necessarily need to. You can make these little changes, have 15 years of ownership, and now you're contacting people that have owned land in this area for a long time and they've never developed. This person right here, perfect example. Where's the house? There is no house, and they've owned it for at least 15 years. What are you doing with it? Are you looking to build? You looking to sell? You considering selling? What's going on? So it's all just a numbers game, and yeah, that's pretty much the basics of pulling a list through Propstream. Maybe I'll make a video in the future of how to find buyers through Propstream, but for the sake of this video, it's just how to get leads through Propstream.